Alvaro was born and raised in Pontevedra, Spain. He spent a lot of time traveling around and living in various cities. In 2012, Alvaro first came to Vietnam. At first, he did not think he would live and work in Hanoi. But gradually learning about the culture, history, and people of Vietnam, Alvaro felt attached and wanted to stay here for a long time. As a participation in a Vietnamese cultural promotion event organized by Friends of Vietnam's Heritage (FVH), Alvaro has a better understanding of the history of Hanoi's building and heritage. Later, he spent a lot of time and effort researching the legacy and historical buildings in Hanoi. When given the opportunity, Alvaro decided to be a volunteer tour guide organizing events to promote the beauty of Vietnam's heritage to young people in Vietnam and foreigners living in Hanoi. The monthly cultural promotion activities organized by Alvaro and his colleagues are well received and attended, especially by young Vietnamese and foreigners living in Hanoi. Hello and welcome everyone to Sharing Vietnam on VT Standard Viet channel. Our guest today is Mr. Alvaro. He has had 2 years learning and doing investigation about Vietnamese culture and history. He also organized a lot of activities to help Vietnamese people and foreigners who are working here know about the Vietnamese beauty of heritage. Thank you, Mr. Alvaro, for joining our program today. Firstly, could you please share what makes you want to stay here in Vietnam and fall in love with Vietnam for such a long time?
I came here for work and I knew nothing about Vietnam, nothing. And I thought that I was coming to a place more like Bangkok. And I started discovering all the culture that it has to offer, especially in the buildings I like. So that was very pleasant. And that made me want to learn more and more. And then that love of the city started developing along with that I love my job here. So it's a win-win. I like the city, I like the job, so I've decided to stay.
What are the motivations and also the encouragement to have you to organize the activities to convey the beauty and knowledge of Vietnam's heritage?
It was very difficult for me. And I just didn't understand the culture, didn't understand the city. I thought traffic was a nightmare, the pollution as well. But little by little, I started coming to these walks from Friends of Vietnam Heritage as a person attending the walks. And I started learning about Vietnam, started learning about the history, the buildings that I first saw. When you understand the history behind them or why they're there, I started liking that very much. And this organization, the Friends of Vietnam Heritage, at some point, needed guides. So that's how it started, and I love it. I love every time we go on a walk and people who've been here for quite a long time and they know very little about the city, even Vietnamese who come to the walk and they know very, very little or nothing about the city itself. And it's very rewarding to share something that you like.
Could you please share in details about the activities that you have been organizing about the Vietnamese heritage?
Since I arrived, like 5-6 years ago, being a volunteer guide for them, I think this is my second year, was done by the Japanese section. So I took the walk in Japanese, I translated it into English, and then from there, I started doing my own research, right? I'm interested in the architecture. So for example, the temple downtown, the Nok Sok Temple, I had to learn myself about what it means. I go there multiple times just to make sure that what I'm saying corresponds to what I see. And we do the walk many times before we offer it to the people, right? Then once we run it for the normal people, we encourage everybody to say what they think. So, and that is the process, but it's a very lengthy process, especially because there's very little information and very few books in English about Hanoi, beyond the most obvious touristic things like the Temple of Literature or things like that.
Could you please share about the process that you have learned and do investigation about Vietnam's culture and heritage?
One of the examples is the Hanoi Citadel. If you go to the Citadel, the first thing you do is obviously you read the signs inside, right? So that gives me the baseline for the research. So it mentions Ly Tay To, right? But it just mentions Ly Tay To. So I need to go online and try to find books about Ly Tay To that are relevant to the Citadel and incorporate something about his kingdom, right? Then we go to the museum, for example, inside the Citadel, and the display there, even if it's explained, you investigate, and then I really learned a lot about maybe the dynasties in Vietnam, you know, the Ly, the Le, the Chan, the Mac, and what they meant, the Nguyen dynasty in the 19th century, right? And I read a lot of books. I read everything that falls onto my lap in English, like everything.
At every event promoting culture, especially the works introducing Hanoi, Alvaro acts as a tour guide, introducing friends from different countries about the beauty and historical stories associated with the heritage buildings in Hanoi. Alvaro is particularly fond of the architectural work of Hanoi, especially those of French architecture. He spent hours studying and documenting them. Today, many legacy buildings are degraded, no longer intact, or even no longer exist. Alvaro spent a lot of time researching the works through historical documents, old articles, photographs of Hanoi many years ago. In addition, he and his Vietnamese friends meet and talk with older people who have been with the heritage for many years. They have a rich knowledge of the history of his works. From there, he can convey the most accurate knowledge to the participants of the event.
The trip today has been phenomenal. I've lived in Hanoi for 3 years, and I go past most of the buildings that we've seen so far, but know nothing about them. This trip has been very informative historically and also culturally. I've learned amazing facts about Hanoi, and now I'm feeling like a true Hanoian, you know, that when people come to visit me, I can tell them a little bit of what I've learned about my city, Hanoi.
Em thấy là ở Hà Nội thì có rất nhiều những cái di sản văn hóa và những cái công trình của riêng thủ đô. Thế nên là cái trách nhiệm mà bảo tồn những cái công trình đấy như là ga Hà Nội, như là Lăng Bác, như là bảo tàng thì nó là không phải trách nhiệm của riêng ai cả, mà là của tất cả chúng ta, của tất cả những người trẻ tuổi. Mà hiện tại thì là những người nước ngoài người ta còn nhìn thấy những cái vấn đề đấy nữa là người Việt chúng ta. Trước tiên là mình phải biết được là mình có những cái di sản văn hóa và mình phải biết trân trọng trước đã. Xong sau đấy thì mình giới thiệu nó đến bạn bè của mình, với những người mà không phải sống ở thủ đô và những người bạn bè quốc tế.
Alvaro wants more and more young Vietnamese as well as foreigners living in Hanoi to be familiar with the cultural features of the capital. As we all know, nowadays a lot of heritage sites are gone. So what do you do to understand and know more about them?
Well, the things that do not exist, when I learn about it, is totally by mistake, basically. Like I see a building, I try to research on that building, I try to find pictures. That's the main source. I try to find pictures of that particular building that I'm looking at, and then an example is the temple of torment in the lake, in the Quang Kinh Lake, that right now we only have this little tower, but actually the temple complex reached almost to the opera house. It was gigantic, and I found it by mistake on a picture, for example, and that took me, the research went that way. But it's difficult, right? The main thing are the pictures, the picture bibliography that we have left from travelers in the past.
Could you please share about the assistance and help that you receive from Vietnamese people while you organize these activities?
So obviously I don't speak Vietnamese, and much less I can't ask people. So I usually take Vietnamese friends with me, and I ask them, can you translate that plaque on the wall? Can you ask this person, what is this? Why is this here, right? Sometimes we find an old person, because they're a wealth of information, you know, like older people have lived through so many stages in the Vietnamese history that you need to talk to them, and they will not talk to me because I don't speak Vietnamese. I think Vietnamese, even if they are very proud of their heritage, right, I think most of them cannot articulate why they're proud of their heritage or what aspects of their heritage they're proud of. And the ones who know, they're very proud of sharing. They think is being lost because of the construction, and they're very grateful, you know, and this is not something they do for a foreigner. In an FVH we have Vietnamese and foreigners alike. I mean, it is not just a foreign organization, and we need them. Whenever we go on a trip, we need assistance from Vietnamese people, and they're all very, very welcoming. It's only been a good positive. And they do like it, you know. Sometimes they bring children, and they're very interested. Sometimes when we are doing the walking tours, some Vietnamese, they just join us.
You know that in Vietnam nowadays, in some places, the activities of conservation of heritage in Vietnam have not been fully attention to. So what do you think that Vietnam should do to improve the situation?
I think there's money in heritage. I think that Vietnam needs to realize that there's a gigantic income in the future for heritage, where with beautiful scenery, beautiful landscapes, people go to Sapa, to Hazan, etc., right? But Hoi An is a big destination, for example, and it's a destination because of the heritage. When people come to Hanoi, whenever I have friends coming to Hanoi and they've never been here, they don't know Hanoi has heritage to offer. They don't know Hanoi has history. They think it's just a stepping stone where you land on the plane and you stay a couple of days before you go somewhere else, to Ha Long or whatever. And it's wrong. And Vietnam starts taking care of the heritage, making it pretty again, taking care of the colors, not allowing the destruction of it, and also to make it easier for foreigners to know about it. There's nothing written, there's barely any explanation. When you go to a temple, there's nothing there. Nothing is explained. A very well-defined stages in history. And by creating a narrative into the tourism industry would help Hanoi preserve the heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Alvaro, for all of your sharing today. We hope that you have more activities to be organized to help people know more about Vietnam culture and heritage.
Okay.
That is the end of our program today. If you have any comment, please send emails to us through sharingvietnam@netvietTV.net. Thank you and see you next time.